Imagine catching your wife with another man, right in front of you, then realizing the lies go far deeper than you ever suspected. This is the story of how I exposed her secrets, fought back, and took my life back. My name's Brandon, I'm 35, and I've been with my wife, Lisa, for 7 years. Lisa's the kind of woman people notice, smart, stunning, confident. She's a real charmer, and at first, I liked that. But lately, I'm starting to wonder if I should have been looking a little closer. I'm not one of those guys who gets insecure. I don't do the snooping around thing. I've always thought, if you're in, you're all in. Trust is either there, or it's not. Lisa's in marketing, and she's got the kind of career where she's always out networking, going to these industry events, often coming home late, but until recently, I didn't think much of it. She'd say it was just part of the job, and I bought it. Why wouldn't I? But a few weeks ago, things started to feel off. Lisa was spending more time at work functions, dressing up a little more, and her phone was glued to her hand. She'd laugh at messages, then swipe her phone screen up, putting it away the second I walked into the room. When I asked, she'd say it was just her friend Rachel, but something in the way she said it didn't sit right with me. At first, I told myself not to overthink it. After all, she's my wife. But that gut feeling started to grow, gnawing at me. And if there's one thing I've learned in life, it's to trust my instincts. So, a few days after I first started noticing Lisa's behavior, things escalated. Now, I'm not one to jump to conclusions, but I wasn't about to ignore this. Suddenly, Lisa started working out more, like she was getting in shape for something, or someone. New gym clothes, new perfume, and let me tell you, the perfume wasn't subtle. Strong, alluring, like she was preparing to impress someone. When I asked her about the changes, she just shrugged it off, saying she was doing it for herself. Sure, maybe. But it didn't feel that way. We'd go out, and instead of sitting next to me or even engaging, she'd be on her phone, texting or checking notifications every few minutes. And when I'd casually ask, she'd dismiss it, saying it was just work stuff. Then, last Friday night happened. Lisa told me she'd be out for a work event, again. I decided not to make a big deal of it. But this time, something in my gut was telling me to look closer. Maybe it was the way she lingered by the mirror, checking her reflection one last time, or the fact that she didn't even try to give me her usual, "Don't wait up" line. I went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. So, at around 11, I did something I'd never done before. I got in my car, and I drove over to the club where she said the work event was. I figured I'd just take a quick look, see if she was really where she said she'd be. But what I found that night was going to change everything. I pulled up to the club, parked across the street, and waited. It was one of those upscale places downtown with a line out front and loud music spilling onto the street. The kind of place Lisa used to drag me to when we were first dating, before we settled into what I thought was a solid, honest life together. I leaned back in the car, watching the entrance, thinking maybe I was crazy for even being there. About half an hour later, she walked out of the club. But she wasn't alone. She was with a guy I didn't recognize, tall, dark hair, way too close to her for it to be professional. They were laughing, leaning into each other in that familiar way, and I could tell from where I sat that this wasn't just a coworker. Then it happened. Right there on the sidewalk, he leaned in and kissed her. Not a quick peck either. This was a full-on kiss, like they were the only two people in the world. And she kissed him back. My heart dropped, my hands clenching on the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. I was seeing it with my own eyes, but it didn't feel real. This was Lisa, my wife. And here she was, out in the open, betraying me like it was nothing. They broke apart, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world, and started walking down the street. My mind was racing. Part of me wanted to storm out of the car, confront them right there, make a scene. But I stopped myself. I wasn't about to act on pure emotion. I needed to keep my cool, get the full picture before doing anything rash. I'd come this far, and I wasn't about to lose control now. Instead, I grabbed my phone and snapped a quick photo. I followed them as they walked, keeping my distance but close enough to see every move. I kept a safe distance, watching as Lisa and her mystery man strolled through the city like a couple with nothing to hide. They ducked into another bar a few blocks down, one of those trendy places that's dimly lit and loud enough that nobody would notice, or care, about a little extra intimacy. I watched through the front window, my stomach twisting as they cozied up at the bar, leaning into each other like teenagers on a first date. Every laugh, every touch, it was like watching a stranger in my wife's skin. The worst part? She looked happy, like she was exactly where she wanted to be. All the warmth, the attention, the things she used to give me, she was giving them to someone else, out in the open. I took another photo, and then another. Evidence. Hard proof for when the time came to confront her. But I wasn't ready for that yet. I needed to know how deep this went, how many lies were built around this one ugly truth. After an hour, they left the bar. This time, they didn't walk, they called for an Uber. I watched the car pull up, and as they got in, I made a split-second decision. I hopped back in my own car and followed at a safe distance. I wasn't about to let her just disappear into the night with this guy. The car headed toward the outskirts of town, eventually stopping at a hotel, a sleek, modern place with privacy windows and everything designed for discretion. They got out, and she took his hand, walking into that hotel without a single glance over her shoulder. I parked down the street, heart pounding, and watched them disappear inside. That was it. I'd seen enough. I didn't need to follow her into the hotel to know what was going on. I sat there for a long while, staring at the lobby doors, anger and betrayal burning through me. It wasn't just that she'd cheated, it was that she'd done it so brazenly, like I'd never find out. I drove home, each mile weighed down with the knowledge of what I'd seen. But I wasn't about to crumble. She had no idea who she was dealing with. This wasn't going to end the way she thought it would. When I got home that night, I felt like a stranger in my own house. Every room, every picture on the walls, everything seemed tainted now, touched by her betrayal. But I wasn't going to let my emotions take over. No, I was going to be smart about this. If she thought I'd just sit back and let her walk all over me, she was dead wrong. I knew I couldn't let her sense anything was up. I needed more proof, and I needed to be ready when the time came to confront her. So, the next morning, I called a private investigator, someone I knew wouldn't waste time or beat around the bush. I told him everything, where she worked, the places she'd been going, and even showed him the photos I'd taken. He listened carefully, then assured me he'd get me what I needed. The following week was like living in a shadow. I acted normal around Lisa, keeping everything as routine as possible, but every word, every glance felt like a lie. She'd laugh, make small talk, even throw a casual, "love you," my way, but all I saw was the mask she was wearing, a mask I was slowly chipping away. The private investigator was quick. Within days, he tracked down her patterns. Her work events had nothing to do with business. He'd seen her with the same guy, meeting him at various spots around town, always careful but never careful enough. The guy was no networking contact or even a fling. He was her assistant, some guy who'd started working with her a few months back, supposedly helping her with marketing projects. I'd met him once, briefly, at one of her company's events, and thought nothing of it. When the investigator showed me the reports, the pictures, and the timestamps, I felt a calm rage settle in. I now had everything I needed. Every detail of their little secret was laid out in front of me, undeniable, with enough proof to make sure she couldn't wiggle her way out of this. One night, I watched her come home, all smiles, acting like nothing was wrong. She went to bed early, exhausted from her so-called busy day. But little did she know, her carefully built lie was about to come crashing down. And this time, I'd be the one pulling the strings. A few days later, I was ready. The investigator had given me all the evidence I needed, and now I had a plan in place. But I wanted to do this on my terms, in a way she'd never forget. So I waited for the perfect moment. On Friday night, she came home a little later than usual, clearly thinking I was none the wiser. I greeted her at the door, acting casual, my tone smooth, giving nothing away. "Hey, Lisa. Long day?" I asked, watching her carefully. She gave me her usual excuse, something about a last-minute meeting with clients, and I nodded, pretending to believe every word. But tonight, I didn't let her off the hook that easily. "You know, I thought we could go out," I said, holding her gaze. "It's been a while since we had a real night out together. Just us." She hesitated, clearly taken off guard. "Oh, well, I actually have another work event tomorrow," she said, trying to dodge. "Maybe we can plan for next weekend?" I didn't miss a beat. "Tomorrow's perfect. Let's meet at one of your favorite spots, you know, the place downtown. The one you're always at for work events." Her face flickered with confusion, a hint of nervousness crossing her eyes, but she quickly covered it with a forced smile. Sure. "That sounds nice," she finally said, trying to act normal. The next evening, I got to the bar early. I made sure I had a clear view of the entrance and ordered a drink, taking my time as I watched people come and go. Then, right on time, Lisa walked in, but she wasn't alone. She had her assistant by her side, laughing, leaning into him as if they were on a private date. I watched her scan the bar, likely looking for me but not spotting me in the dim light. She looked comfortable, too comfortable. It was obvious she thought she'd get away with it, that her secret life was safe. But tonight, I wasn't going to let her hide behind her lies anymore. I got up and walked toward them, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. When I reached their table, she looked up, her eyes going wide. The color drained from her face as she processed the fact that I was standing there, staring right at her and her lover. "Hey, Lisa," I said, voice steady. "Mind if I join you and, oh, what was your name again?" I looked at her assistant, watching him squirm under my gaze. The silence was deafening. She stammered, trying to find some excuse, some way out of the mess she'd created. But there was no escaping now. Her eyes darted between me and him, realizing that her web of lies had finally unraveled. I pulled out my phone and laid it on the table, tapping the screen to show her the photos, the texts, everything I'd gathered. "Looks like you two have been busy," I said, my voice low but unyielding. "Care to explain?" But I didn't need an explanation. I already knew the truth. And for the first time, she knew she couldn't lie her way out of it. Lisa's face went pale as she stared at the photos and messages on my phone, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. I watched her squirm, her composure shattering piece by piece. I had her cornered, and she knew it. After a moment, she finally spoke, her voice shaky. "Brandon, it's not what it looks like," she started, reaching out as if that would somehow soften the blow. "I mean, yes, there's been something. But it wasn't serious. I promise, it didn't mean anything. It was just a mistake." Her assistant, let's call him Tyler, looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. He glanced at me, then at Lisa, visibly sweating, probably regretting every decision that had led him here. I wasn't giving either of them a way out, and they could feel it. "A mistake?" I echoed, my voice calm but cold. "A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill or losing your keys. This isn't a mistake, Lisa. This was deliberate, planned, and from the looks of it, it's been going on for a while." I kept my voice steady, controlled. I wanted her to feel every word. Her expression crumbled further, and her hand reached across the table, but I pulled back, not about to give her an inch. "Brandon, please," she said, her voice pleading. It was a distraction, okay? Things haven't been the same between us, and I didn't know how to talk to you about it. I got caught up, and I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. But it didn't mean anything, really. Didn't mean anything. I repeated, letting the bitterness come through. I watched you walk into that hotel with him, Lisa. I saw you kissing him like you were a carefree couple. You risked everything, and for what? Something that didn't mean anything. I shook my head, the anger bubbling just below the surface. You think I'm stupid enough to believe that? She sat there, defeated, searching for a way out but finding none. Tyler was speechless, glancing nervously between us like he was waiting for me to throw a punch. But I wasn't about to give him that satisfaction. Instead, I took a step back, the calm returning as I looked at her one last time. This marriage, I said, my voice steady, is over. You made that choice the second you stepped out with him. Don't bother coming home. I'll be taking care of the details with a lawyer, and trust me, I'll make sure you don't get away with anything. I turned and walked out, leaving her and her lover sitting there, stunned, knowing their game was up. Walking away from that table was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but I knew I couldn't stay a second longer. My trust, my marriage, my life as I knew it, it was all shattered, and there was no putting it back together. Lisa had made her choices, and I wasn't about to let her drag me down with her. That night, I went home alone. The silence in our house, which used to feel comforting, now felt hollow, like an empty shell of the life I thought we had. I looked around, at the photos on the walls, the mementos of vacations and birthdays, and it was like I was looking at someone else's life. The version of us in those photos? That was a lie, a memory tainted by everything she'd done. But I wasn't about to wallow in it. I called my lawyer first thing the next morning, explained the situation, and gave him all the evidence I'd collected. I didn't leave anything out, detailing every photo, every message, every late night she claimed was work. He listened quietly, taking it all in, then assured me he'd handle everything. My only job, he said, was to stay calm and let him do the heavy lifting. A day later, I went to the bank and sorted out our accounts, locking down what I could. I wasn't going to let Lisa take advantage of anything I'd worked for. If she wanted out of this marriage, she'd get her wish, but on my terms, not hers. Then came the call I was half expecting. Lisa, probably realizing just how real this was getting, called me in a panic, begging to talk. "Brandon, please, can we meet? I know I messed up, but we can work this out. Just give me a chance to explain," she pleaded, her voice shaky. The calm, self-assured woman I'd married was gone, replaced by someone scrambling to hold on to whatever she thought she had left. "I already gave you a chance to explain, Lisa." That night, at the bar, I replied, my tone cold. "And I heard everything I needed to. You've made your choices. Now you'll live with them." And with that, I hung up, ignoring the string of texts she sent in the minutes that followed. I didn't need to read them. I already knew they'd be filled with half-baked apologies and empty promises. In the days that followed, she tried every trick in the book to get back in touch, sending emails, showing up at the house. She'd even tried calling my friends and family, painting herself as a misunderstood wife who'd made a mistake. But I stayed firm. I wasn't about to fall for her lies again. This time, I was in control, and she was going to see just how serious I was about walking away. A week later, my lawyer had everything prepared, and we officially filed for divorce. I'd made sure he included every piece of evidence, from the photos to the texts, right down to the witness statements from the investigator. My lawyer assured me that, given the proof we had, the case was clear-cut. There was no way Lisa could argue her way out of this one. Of course, when she was served with the papers, she didn't take it well. Lisa went into full-on damage control mode. She'd always been a skilled talker, quick to convince people of whatever story she wanted them to believe, and I could see her working that same angle now. She hired her own lawyer and tried to flip the narrative, making herself out to be the one who'd been neglected in the marriage, as if that somehow justified what she'd done. But her arguments were weak. She had no proof, no substance, only the stories she was spinning to cover up her own guilt. Every time she tried to push back, my lawyer was ready, countering each of her claims with solid evidence that showed exactly what had been going on. Her work events that had nothing to do with work, her late meetings that were actually secret dates with her assistant, it was all laid out for the court to see, and every detail only made her look worse. Still, Lisa wasn't about to go down without a fight. She tried to contest our financial arrangements, demanding a bigger cut of our assets than she deserved. But I'd already been a step ahead, securing everything I could. My lawyer made it clear that she'd forfeited any right to a generous settlement the moment she started seeing someone else behind my back. The judge agreed, siding with us on nearly every point. As the trial went on, Lisa grew more desperate. Her confident, self-assured demeanor began to crack, and the cracks only widened as more of the truth came to light. Her lawyer attempted to paint her actions as a momentary lapse in judgment, but the evidence spoke louder. The photos, the messages, the dates and times, it all stacked up against her. In a final attempt, Lisa tried to turn on the waterworks, pleading to the judge about how sorry she was, claiming that she'd made a huge mistake and just wanted a chance to make things right. But by then, it was too little, too late. The judge saw through the act, and so did everyone else in that courtroom. By the end of the hearing, it was clear, I was coming out on top. The divorce settlement was in my favor, and she was left with a fraction of what she'd hoped for. She would leave the marriage with almost nothing, just as she'd left me with almost nothing when she chose her double life over the life we'd built together. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt a weight lift. It wasn't just about winning the legal battle, it was about reclaiming my life and closing the door on the lies she tried to bury me under. I was free, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could finally start over on my own terms. After the dust settled from the divorce, I thought I'd heard it all. I was prepared to move on and start fresh, but, as it turned out, the surprises weren't over. A few weeks later, I got a message from someone I didn't expect, Tyler's fiancée. She'd found my number through mutual contacts, wanting to talk about the fallout from the affair. She explained that she, too, had been blindsided, learning about the entire mess only after Tyler was served his own notice from work. Apparently, the company wasn't impressed with the scandal, and Tyler had been fired as soon as word got out about his relationship with Lisa. It was in that conversation that I learned just how deep Lisa's deception ran. Tyler's fiancée, let's call her Emma, shared some details that painted an even darker picture. Apparently, Lisa had been manipulating Tyler from the beginning, playing on his insecurities and his ambitions to get him wrapped up in the affair. She'd told him all kinds of lies, about how our marriage was supposedly falling apart, about how she was unhappy and trapped. She'd fed him stories about how I was inattentive and didn't support her dreams, painting herself as the victim. I sat there, listening to Emma describe the lies Lisa had spun, feeling a mix of disgust and relief. Disgust at the sheer audacity of it all, but relief that I was finally seeing the full truth. Lisa hadn't just betrayed me, she'd created an entire fictional world to justify her actions, manipulating everyone around her. Emma and I ended up talking for a while. She was trying to pick up the pieces, just like I was, and we shared a strange sense of solidarity in knowing we'd both been lied to by the people we thought we'd spend our lives with. Before we ended the call, she told me something that would stick with me. She always wanted more, you know. Tyler told me she wasn't just looking for a fling, she wanted someone who'd idolize her, someone who'd make her feel important. She didn't care who got hurt, as long as she felt special. After that call, I felt even more justified in my decisions. Lisa's betrayal had been about more than just infidelity, it had been a reflection of who she truly was, a person who was willing to destroy lives just to feel a little more important, a little more adored. I'd walked away from this mess, scarred but stronger. Lisa and Tyler were left with nothing but the wreckage they'd caused, while Emma and I each got a fresh start. I knew that, in the end, I was the one who had come out on top, not just because I'd won in court, but because I'd reclaimed my life from someone who didn't deserve a place in it. After my conversation with Emma, I felt a strange sense of closure. All the unanswered questions, the constant second-guessing, and the anger I'd been carrying finally started to fade. I'd learned exactly who Lisa was, and I knew, without a doubt, that walking away was the best thing I'd ever done. With the divorce final and the truth fully out, I started focusing on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into work, reconnecting with friends, and even took up boxing, a long-time passion I'd let go of during our marriage. There was something therapeutic about the discipline, the challenge. Each jab and punch helped me channel the anger and frustration into something constructive, something that would actually make me stronger. People around me started to notice the difference. My friends, who'd stuck by me through it all, told me I seemed more grounded, like the old Brandon they'd known before I'd been tangled in Lisa's web. Even my family saw a change. My dad, who doesn't say much but always knows the right moment to speak, told me over dinner one night, "You're back. Whatever weight you were carrying, it's gone." The more I rebuilt my life, the clearer it became that Lisa's betrayal had given me a gift. I'd lost a marriage, but I'd gained a stronger, clearer sense of who I was and what I wanted. And that version of me, the one who had faced the darkest part of his life and come out the other side, was someone I respected more than I ever had before. One night, while out with a few friends, I unexpectedly ran into Lisa. It had been a few months since the divorce was finalized, and I hadn't seen her since that courtroom showdown. She was sitting alone at a corner table in the bar, a shadow of her former self. She looked tired, worn out, like someone who'd gone a few rounds with life and lost. Our eyes met across the room, and I could see the flash of recognition, and then, something else. Maybe regret. She didn't come over, and I didn't make a move toward her. We both knew there was nothing left to say. That silent moment between us was all the closure I needed. Lisa had made her choices, and I'd moved on. In the months that followed, I found myself thinking more about what I wanted in life, beyond the anger, beyond the need to prove anything to anyone. I started seeing people again, making friends without any pressure to jump into something serious. Trust was something I knew I'd have to rebuild in myself before I could ever give it to anyone else, and I took my time with it. I met someone, a woman named Jenna, who was straightforward, kind, and refreshingly real. She didn't play games, didn't put on a show. We started hanging out casually, with no expectations. She knew about my past and never once asked questions or judged. She just listened. It was a small thing, but it felt like a new beginning. Looking back, I could see how much Lisa's betrayal had taught me. I'd learned the hard way about loyalty, about the importance of trusting my gut, and about what kind of person I wanted to be. I'd faced some dark moments, but I'd come out stronger, with a clearer sense of who I was and who I wanted beside me. My experience with Lisa had taken me to rock bottom, but it also gave me the foundation to rebuild, to see life in a new way. I'd become resilient, able to handle challenges head-on, and for the first time, I felt proud of the man I'd become. Today, I'm genuinely happy. Free from the lies and manipulation that once weighed me down, I'm building a new life rooted in honesty, resilience, and self-respect. Lisa is nothing more than a chapter in my past, a memory that doesn't haunt me anymore. To anyone who's been in my shoes, dealing with betrayal and loss, I can tell you this: there's a way out, and there's a way forward. You'll feel lost, you'll feel broken, but you'll also find the strength you didn't know you had. I learned that sometimes, the hardest moments in life are the ones that shape us the most. As for me, I came out of this as the real winner. I got my life back. And it feels damn good. Now that I've stepped out of the shadow of betrayal, I've been able to focus on what truly matters. My priorities have shifted. I no longer waste energy on people who don't add value to my life. I've reconnected with friends who genuinely care, built stronger bonds with family, and focused on my own personal growth. The weight I carried for so long, all that resentment and disappointment, feels like it's finally lifted. As for Jenna, she's become an important part of my life, but in a natural, pressure-free way. She's shown me that relationships can be simple, built on genuine kindness and honesty, not on manipulation or pretense. I don't feel the need to rush into anything, but for the first time in a long time, I'm open to the possibility of real trust. In a way, Lisa's betrayal became a blessing in disguise. It forced me to confront my own resilience, taught me to prioritize self-respect, and reminded me that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to let go. It's strange to think that, in some twisted way, her deceit helped me become stronger and more clear-headed than ever. Final thoughts, a message to those going through it. If you're listening to this and you're struggling in a similar situation, trust me, there's light at the end of this. You'll get past the pain, and one day you'll look back and see how much stronger you've become. The experience will shape you, sharpen you, and teach you things you'd never learn otherwise. Betrayal may have shattered the life you once knew, but it doesn't have to define your future. I'm living proof of that. I'm grateful for the lessons, grateful for the people who stood by me, and grateful, most of all, to finally be living a life built on truth. Moving forward, I'm not looking back. Life is too short for regrets. I came out of this story whole, and more myself than I ever was before. And that's what true victory looks like.